The LA police yielded to pressure and opened their files to the public. But instead of putting any questions to rest, the files raised more doubts when researchers discovered that substantial amounts of evidence had been destroyed or lost.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, my thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there. Thank you very much.
Robert Kennedy has been shot.
Senator Robert Kennedy died at 1:44 in the morning on June 6, 1968, 25 hours after he was shot. Thousands of mourners stood in silence as his funeral train slowly crossed America.
My brother need not be idealized or enlarged in death beyond what he was in life. To be remembered simply as a good and decent man who saw wrong and tried to right it, saw suffering and tried to heal it, saw war and tried to stop it. Those of us who loved him and who take him to his rest today pray that what he was to us, what he wished for others, will someday come to pass for all the world.
Immediately after the shooting, police arrested Sirhan Sirhan, a young Palestinian. He had been caught in the pantry of the Ambassador Hotel with a smoking gun.
Sirhan was apprehended with a gun in his hand, literally a smoking gun. There were witnesses, many of them very good, who saw Sirhan with the gun, who saw Sirhan shoot at Bobby. Sirhan was immediately apprehended, and for all intents and purposes, it was an open and shut case.
Within hours, Los Angeles Mayor Sam Yorty announced the identity of the assassin.
That his name appears to be Sirhan, S-A-R-H-A-N, Sirhan. Both names, Sirhan, Sirhan.
There were 76 people in the pantry that night. All of their evidence flatly contradicts the official version. Every single eyewitness to the shooting insisted that Sirhan Sirhan was always in front of Kennedy and several feet away. Yet the shots that killed Kennedy were fired into the back of his head at point-blank range.
I am absolutely convinced Sirhan's gun did not fire the bullets that killed Bobby. There was a second gun there, and it was fired.
Born in 1925, Robert Francis Kennedy was the third of four sons born to Rose and Joseph Kennedy. Their wealth and social position ensured a charmed life. Bobby was the academic of the family, graduating from Harvard with a degree in law. But in 1959, he abandoned law to run John Kennedy's campaign for the presidency. Bobby ran a brilliant, sometimes ruthless campaign, which ensured that his brother would enter the White House the following year. Appointed Attorney General, he immediately launched a crusade against organized crime. A prime target was Teamster boss Jimmy Hoffa. Civil rights for black Americans became another great crusade for Bobby Kennedy as Attorney General. In the South, his support for the Freedom Riders and Martin Luther King earned him the undying loyalty of the poor and the oppressed.
I was losing faith in the American system, and I was losing faith in my white fellow Americans. So therefore, when Bobby Kennedy came along, there was a white person who was sensitive to the problems of this nation in a manner that did not gloss over its equities.
When John F. Kennedy was assassinated, Lyndon Johnson quickly took control of the White House, and Bobby Kennedy soon lost his job as Attorney General. When we continue, we'll watch RFK's bold return to the top of the political scene. As U.S. Attorney General, Robert Kennedy made his mark as a crusader for civil rights and against organized crime. When he returned to politics in 1968, Kennedy had a new crusade, getting the U.S. out of Vietnam. Kennedy had narrowly won a Senate seat from New York in 1964. When Lyndon Johnson withdrew from the 1968 presidential race, Bobby decided to run. In his final interview, 30 minutes before he was murdered, he spelled out his policy of withdrawal from Vietnam.
We've had more Americans killed there in the last several weeks than any time during the war. And we're now, 6 months ago, we were talking about bombing Hanoi, and we're concerned about that because we're going to kill civilians. Now we're killing large numbers of them as we bomb Saigon. I just think that we just have to change our policies, and I would hope that the Democratic Party would recognize that.
He felt responsible for what was happening in Vietnam. And as a person who was involved in the anti-war movement for several years up to that point, it's one of the reasons I supported him, because I felt he was the only candidate who could end the war.
The California Democratic primary on June 4th, 1968, was the acid test. Lose and the battle was over. Win, and he had a chance of winning the nomination and then the presidency. At a little before midnight, the return showed a clear victory for Kennedy.
That we can start to work together. We are a great country, and a selfish country, and a compassionate country. And I intend to make that my basis for running and over the period of the next few months.
At that point, we turned to go to a press conference for the print media in the Colonial Room beyond the pantry. As we headed in that direction, Bob stopped to shake hands with a couple of kitchen workers. I can remember the joy I felt at that point, because I felt this was symbolic of the campaign. That we now have a president.
When the shooting started, and I just saw him drop. Like a puppet. The strings cut, he just twisted and fell. And people in front of me started to fall.
I just started shaking violently, saw flashes, heard crackling, and just fell and blacked out. But later I found out that Bob's last words were, "Is everybody okay?"
Within hours of arresting Sirhan, police discovered an apparent motive for the assassination. They found notebooks at Sirhan's apartment containing threats to kill Kennedy because of his support for Israel in his war against the Arabs. They also discovered Sirhan had been seen earlier on the day of the shooting acting suspiciously. Sirhan had spent 4 hours rapid firing into targets at the San Gabriel Valley Gun Club. The intensity of his practice session ensured there were many witnesses able to identify him to the police. Later, he was seen at the Ambassador Hotel, where Bobby Kennedy was holding his post-election celebrations. Security was provided by a private security company. Los Angeles police had told its officers to stay away from the hotel.
It was very unusual in that we had been informed there would be no security at the Ambassador. I say very unusual because when any person of state came into the city, there was at least a minimum deployment of security personnel.
With no police, just private security guards patrolling the hotel, Sirhan was easily able to slip into the kitchen pantry. According to Los Angeles police, as the senator walked through the pantry shaking hands with kitchen workers, Sirhan stepped from beside a steam table and pointed his gun at Kennedy and hotel maitre d' Carl Euchre.
Sirhan was right in front
Euchre
of me.
explained what happened next to reporter Ted Chirac in this 1971 film.
I had him right in front of me, and I didn't let him pass me. At that time, I hit one shot. I pushed him down, and I put him over the steam table, and here Sirhan keeps on pulling to the left side, and that's when he starts shooting very rapidly.
5 other people were wounded that night. All had been walking behind Bobby Kennedy through the kitchen pantry. The wounded were taken to the Good Samaritan Hospital in downtown Los Angeles. Robert Francis Kennedy died at 1:44 in the morning on June 6, 1968. There would be plenty of witnesses to help police reconstruct the crime. But when we return to the Robert Kennedy assassination, we'll hear about the jarring discrepancies between their testimony and the final police report. 3 bullets hit Robert Kennedy in the pantry of the Ambassador Hotel kitchen. But did they all come from the gun held by Sirhan Sirhan? The police said yes. But if eyewitness testimony is to be believed, there could have been a second gunman. On June 6th, scene of crime officers, a police forensic expert, and Los Angeles coroner Thomas Noguchi began a careful examination of the scene of the shooting. The forensic expert was LAPD's chief criminologist, Duane Wolfer. Within hours, he drew up a complicated trajectory diagram accounting for all 8 bullets in Sirhan's gun and showing how they had killed Bobby Kennedy and wounded 5 other people.
Bullet 1 entered Senator Kennedy's head behind the right ear. Bullet 2 entered Senator Kennedy's right rear shoulder approximately 7 inches below the top of the shoulder and was lodged in his spine. Bullet 3 entered Senator Kennedy's right rear back approximately 1 inch to the right of Bullet 2. This bullet traveled upward and forward and exited from the victim's chest. It then passed through a ceiling tile and was lost somewhere in the ceiling interspace. Bullet 4 passed through the shoulder pad of Senator Kennedy's suit coat, never entering his body, and traveled upward, striking Paul Schrade in the center of his forehead. Bullet 5 struck Ira Goldstein in the left rear buttock. Bullet 6 passed through Goldstein's trousers, ricocheted off the cement floor, and hit Erwin Stroll in the left leg. Bullet 7 hit William Weasel in the abdomen. Bullet 8 struck the plaster ceiling and then struck Mary Evans in the head.
Now, this was obviously an open and shut case right from the beginning with all of the witnesses and the physical evidence. And I don't think it probably could have been handled in any better fashion than it really was.
But from the outset, there were discrepancies in the evidence, which showed that Sirhan might not have been the only gunman to have fired. The Los Angeles police dismissed or ignored these discrepancies.
But it appears that they concluded within about an hour's time that Sirhan acted alone, or that was going to be their conclusion, and they thereafter tailored all of the evidence to fit that conclusion.
The trial strategy of Sirhan's lawyer, Russell Parsons, may have unwittingly assisted in the suppression of the evidence by never bringing up these crucial points. He even cut short the autopsy evidence, which might have proved Sirhan could not have killed Kennedy. Instead, he persuaded Sirhan to admit the shooting, but plead diminished responsibility, as he could remember nothing about it and still doesn't.
But I've tried a lot of lawsuits, and delays go on and on.
One major discrepancy in the evidence was the distance between Sirhan and Robert Kennedy. The autopsy report showed that the shots which hit Kennedy were fired from a distance of no more than 3 inches. But LAPD's own star witness, Carl Euchre, who was the closest to Kennedy in the pantry, insists that Sirhan's gun never got that close.
Well, how far would the gun muzzle be from Senator Kennedy's head?
About a foot and a half, I would say, foot and a half, 2 feet.
That evidence was never heard at the trial, yet it was supported by all other eyewitnesses in the pantry. Los Angeles police knew the evidence contradicted their version of events. They even filmed a series of reconstructions using witnesses like Carl Euchre. Euchre repeatedly told the police that Sirhan's gun never came within a foot and a half of Kennedy and could not, therefore, have fired the shots which the autopsy showed had killed him. These reconstructions have been kept under lock and key since 1969. The LAPD has never acknowledged their existence. A similar set of reconstructions was filmed by the Los Angeles District Attorney with eyewitness Lisa Urso. In them, Urso can be heard placing Sirhan several feet away from Senator Kennedy.
And the person who had the gun in their hand was about 3 or 4 feet from the senator.
This film has never been seen before. The District Attorney's Office has never released it. The official reconstructions show that Sirhan was always in front of Senator Kennedy. This is supported by all the eyewitnesses who insisted that Sirhan was in front of Kennedy at all times. Yet the autopsy said that the shots that killed Kennedy were fired from behind. So how could Sirhan have been in a position to shoot the senator?
Was it possible for Sirhan to get behind you and behind Senator Kennedy and shoot from behind?
No, this was complete impossible, because Sirhan was in front of me and he didn't have no way to go behind me.
Another major discrepancy is the bullet trajectory analysis drawn up by LAPD criminologist Duane Wolfer. Bullet 8, which he showed hitting Mary Evans on a downward ricochet, never happened. Mary Evans' medical report states quite clearly that she was hit by a bullet traveling upward. The LAPD's account of the bullet which wounded Paul Schrade in the forehead was equally unbelievable.
The police said it had gone through the shoulder area of Bob's coat, didn't hit his body, entered and came out near the seam. And we found photographs in the Los Angeles Police Department that showed a police officer wearing Robert Kennedy's coat, and a rod had been put through those 2 holes to show the bullet path, which went in a steep upward direction away from me. So it really seems strange to me, a bullet that's going through the coat and at this upward direction away from me would hit me in the head. I would have had to have my head on Robert Kennedy's shoulder for that shot to have hit me, or been 9 feet tall.
But these discrepancies between the eyewitness evidence and the LAPD case didn't worry Attorney General Evel Younger.
Oh, I don't think there were any major discrepancies. If somebody says 1 inch and somebody else says 2 inches, that's a discrepancy. But the jury didn't think it was a significant discrepancy, and neither did I.
But none of the conflicting eyewitness evidence was ever put before the jury. The LAPD case rested on the ballistics report drawn up by its chief criminologist, Duane Wolfer. Throughout its inquiries, Los Angeles police maintained an unshakable confidence in its forensic expert. But in 2 other cases, courts have rejected his testimony completely. One judge described his testimony as negligently false, borders on perjury, and is at least given with a reckless disregard for the truth. In the Kennedy case, his account of the number of bullets is directly contradicted by the FBI and its own scene of crime officers.
Probably upwards of 90% of that forensic evidence was badly mismanaged.
The FBI found another major discrepancy in the LAPD case. In the center divider, its scene of crime officers found 2 .22 caliber bullet holes.
The importance of those 2 holes is that they would be 2 more bullets than Sirhan's gun was capable of firing. Sirhan's gun fired 8 bullets. According to the Los Angeles Police Department, they have accounted for all 8 bullets, and in their accountability, those 2 holes in the center divider do not figure into it.
The FBI report states that its officers ultimately located 4 extra bullets in the woodwork, taking the total to 12. Remember, any more than 8 bullets in the pantry means there had to be a second gunman. In fact, more than 10 police officers later made statements that they saw evidence of bullets in the pantry woodwork. Duane Wolfer also marked the holes, using string to illustrate the bullet trajectory. Despite this testimony from its own officers, the LAPD now insisted the marks it photographed were merely nail holes.
That's completely false and erroneous. I was there right at that moment and observed it, and they were positively bullet holes. Anyone who's saying anything other than that didn't actually see those holes the way I saw them and does not know what they're talking about.
There is substantial evidence, particularly the evidence pointing to the probability that there was more than 8 bullets recovered from the scene, therefore more than one gun fired, that indicates there was someone else involved.
I don't have any doubt that there was another gun in the pantry and that it was fired. Sirhan's gun and the bullets fired from it are responsible for wounding 5 other people. I am absolutely convinced Sirhan's gun did not fire the bullets that killed Bobby.
If that's true, then who fired the fatal shots? The answer may lie in the testimony of several bystanders who heard a mysterious young couple claim responsibility in the moments after the shooting. The story of the woman in the polka dot dress and other suppressed evidence when the Robert Kennedy assassination returns here on A&E. Kennedy was shot. Several witnesses reported seeing 2 people escape from the hotel, boasting they had killed the candidate. But far from welcoming this testimony, the LA police, who were already destroying substantial amounts of evidence, allegedly harassed the witnesses to change their stories.
A young couple in their late teens or early 20s came running by in a state of glee, very excited, very happy, shouting, we shot him, we killed him.
I recall saying they're getting away, or something very similar to that, meaning that I felt that they were part of whoever it was at the time that was shooting the senator.
The most persuasive witness was Sandy Serrano. She gave her account in a television interview less than an hour after the shooting. She would be browbeaten by the LAPD and has never spoken out since.
Running down the stairs in the back, came running down the stairs and said, we've shot him, we've shot him. And I says, who did you shoot? And she says, we shot Senator Kennedy.
Well, it clearly worried him because it was inconsistent with our conclusion that Sirhan was there alone and acted alone.
They badgered and browbeat witnesses to get them to change their stories.
And they were trying to embarrass me and question my sanity and question my intent.
That was the most grotesque abuse of police power I had ever witnessed.
From the outset, the LAPD and the district attorney's office announced it would carefully examine any evidence which pointed to a conspiracy.
We've interviewed 4,000 people, and we've done it because someday somebody, for purposes best known to themselves, regardless of the evidence, is going to try to prove that Sirhan didn't do it, that this was a conspiracy, that this is some big mysterious plan that, in spite of all the investigation, we haven't been able to uncover. We knew it would happen.
But the eyewitnesses and the physical evidence conflict with the official version. But Los Angeles police ignored, destroyed, and covered up this evidence.
The LAPD did a terrible job of handling the evidence. They did not care for it properly. They didn't inventory it properly. They destroyed it. They altered it. They falsified it.
The cover-up began even before the courts had finished hearing the case against Sirhan. Coroner Thomas Noguchi was told to keep his autopsy findings secret.
Found in the senator's remains.
I was advised not to have any information released as to the death of Senator Robert F. Kennedy. I told him I cannot do that.
Unable to gag Noguchi, the Los Angeles authorities fired him, alleging misconduct in the Kennedy autopsy. Noguchi fought his dismissal and was reinstated. But by then, the LAPD had already destroyed much of the key evidence. The center dividers, where scene of crime officers noted bullet holes and .22 caliber bullets, were destroyed on June 27, 1969. The official reason given by the LAPD was that they would not fit in a filing cabinet. 2,400 photographs were burned secretly in a hospital incinerator. Among those photographs were the only pictures taken at the moment of the assassination itself.
Now, this is everything that took place in the pantry during the shooting from behind Robert Kennedy. So what that would have shown, the interesting part about that would have been, you would have seen, if there were a second gun, you would have seen the position of everyone. Most important, you would have seen the position of Robert F. Kennedy when the shooting took place.
Scott Enyart was a 15-year-old amateur photographer and Kennedy supporter. Within minutes of the assassination, the LAPD went to extraordinary lengths to get hold of his film.
I looked up to see a shotgun. I looked up to see guns drawn all around me. They took my wallet. They took my camera. They took the film out of my pockets. They took me and they tossed me into the back of a squad car, which was sitting out right in front of the entrance.
The LAPD promised to return all of Enyart's films, but when he called at the Parker Center Police Headquarters, his photographs were locked in a security cabinet.
And I was not allowed to look at the film. They took this stack of prints and one of the detectives shuffled through them and separated it into two piles. And basically he gave me the photographs from one roll of film leading up to the assassination and then everything after the assassination. Everything that I had taken in the pantry was gone.
Those photographs, which might have either proved or destroyed the prosecution case, had been incinerated by order of the LAPD.
If the police department was right, then my photographs only would have proved that they were right. So for them to destroy it only leads me to believe that that something's being covered up.
There's no reason to have destroyed that evidence. There's no reason to have summarily destroyed at such an early stage all the photographic evidence. I can't come up with a reason, a logical reason why they would have done that.
But the LAPD still faced the testimony of witnesses who claimed to have seen a man and a woman with Sirhan in the Ambassador Hotel crowds less than an hour before the assassination.
There were three people that just didn't fit. They were not as happy as everyone else. They had sour faces, and there was just something about them that just didn't rub me right. And I had told a friend of mine about their presence, and later on I saw them in the pantry when I first went through, and I saw the short person who turned out eventually to be Sirhan, and I saw a taller gentleman and a lady, a very well-built lady with a white polka dot dress on.
Official LAPD files revealed that at least 11 witnesses noticed Sirhan in the company of the polka dot dress girl and another man together inside the Ambassador Hotel in the hours before the shooting. At a little before midnight, a witness saw them enter the pantry through an outside stairway, which led from the parking lot to the second floor of the hotel.
When he started to shoot, the other two turned and ran to a side door, and I said they're getting away.
The couple ran out the way they came in and onto a stairway where Sandy Serrano, a young Kennedy worker, was standing.
She was Caucasian. She had on a white dress with polka dots. She was light-skinned, dark hair. She had black shoes on, and she has a funny nose. And after that, a boy came down with her. He was about 23 years old, and he was Mexican-American, because I can remember that because I'm Mexican-American.
Sandy Serrano wasn't the only witness to the escape of the polka dot dress girl and her companion. LAPD Patrol Sergeant Paul Shiraga was the first police officer on the scene. He arrived within minutes of the shooting. Immediately, he was met by an older couple in a state of near shock.
They were quite hysterical, very hysterical, and were spontaneous. The woman stated that she and her husband were just outside the embassy room when a young couple in their late teens or early 20s came running by in a state of glee, very excited, very happy, shouting, we shot him, we killed him. And the woman says, who did you kill? And the young lady said, Kennedy, we shot him, we killed him. I immediately put out a broadcast with the description of the suspects male and a female Caucasian, the female Caucasian wearing a polka dot dress.
But within minutes, Paul Chiraga's urgent APB was abruptly canceled by a senior officer.
And he said, well, I want you to stop putting out that broadcast. The suspects, words of effect, the suspect's in custody. He didn't want to make a conspiracy out of it, or didn't want anyone to make a conspiracy out of it.
The official police notebook entry Paul Chiraga made of the old couple's name, address, and phone number mysteriously disappeared. It was followed by all 3 official copies of his meticulous duty report detailing their testimony. But the LAPD didn't know that Chiraga had kept a copy for safekeeping. 2 senior officers secretly created a bogus interview, with Chiraga completely changing his evidence about what the couple told him.
What it appears is they took an earlier report of mine, had changed the wording in it to reflect that I had retracted my initial statement.
The bogus document suggested that the polka dot dress girl said they shot him, not the more incriminating "we shot him."
This in itself was wrong. It's a criminal act to modify an official report, but it hit me the moment I looked at it. I said, I never gave this report. I was never interviewed, and this is false.
During a polygraph test recorded on audio tape, Police Sergeant Hank Hernandez tried to get Sandy Serrano to retract her story about the woman in the polka dot dress.
That, of course, would have been indicated an accomplice to Serrano was inconsistent with the one-gunman theory, so the LAPD wanted to get her to retract that. Sergeant Hernandez called her in for a polygraph interview and spent 40 to 50 minutes just haranguing her and trying to get her to retract that statement.
He said, I think you owe it to Senator Kennedy, the late Senator Kennedy, to come forth, be a woman about this. If he, and you don't know, and I don't know whether he's a witness right now in this room watching what we're doing in here, don't shame his death by keeping this thing up. I have compassion for you. I want to know why. I want to know why you did what you did. This is a very serious thing.
I've been those people.
No, Sandy. Remember what I told you about that you can't say you saw something when you didn't see it? Sandy, look, I can explain this to the investigators where you don't even have to talk to them, and they won't talk to you. I can do this. But please, in the name of Kennedy.
I don't want to know the name of Kennedy. Let me just do that.
You know that this is wrong. You may want to be pushing it off with a smirk on your face, with a smile, but you know that deep inside what I'm telling you.
I've never seen a girl.
No, I'm talking about what you have told here about saying a person telling you we have shot Kennedy, and that's wrong. No, it isn't, Sandy. Please, don't laugh it off. Look, I love this man, and you're shaming if right now, he can't even, well, I'm trying not to shout, but this is a very emotional thing with me too, you see. If you love the man, the least you owe him is a courtesy of letting him rest in peace.
Today, Sandy Serrano stands by her story. But why would the police work so hard to destroy and suppress evidence? We'll hear some shocking answers to those questions when we return to the Robert Kennedy assassination. If the Los Angeles police really suppressed a large amount of evidence, what could their motive have been? What we are about to lay out for you is a theory that suggests a conspiracy to kill Robert Kennedy. We remind you that the very nature of conspiracy theories is that they draw together fragile and elusive clues, and they can never be fully proved. Piecing together a logical answer to so many questions is part detective work and part intuition. The trail of one such theory about Robert Kennedy's death leads to the CIA. Paul Chiraga believes the officers running the investigation were former CIA operatives.
There were incidents that I found out since that indicate that CIA men were actually running the downtown headquarters, namely the Hernandez and Pena, who had retired some years before and went to work for government agencies that were no more than front agencies for the CIA. And lo and behold, on the night of the assassination, within minutes, they were present and managing this command control center.
Sergeant Hank Hernandez and Lieutenant Manny Pena were the two key officers in the polka dot dress inquiry. Hernandez boasted to Sandy Serrano about his polygraph work for government agencies.
I have been called to South America, to Vietnam, Europe, and I have administered tests. The last test that I administered was to the dictator in Caracas, Venezuela. He was a big man, a dictator. Pérez Jiménez is the last name. And this is when there was a transition in the government of Venezuela. That's when President Betancourt came in, but this is all behind. But there was a great thing involved over there, and I tested this gentleman.
Hernandez denies ever having worked for the CIA. Paul Chiraga and other critics believe only federal security agencies carried out polygraph tests in such diverse and high-powered circles. Manny Pena was brought in to run the Robert Kennedy investigation from a federal organization, the Agency for International Development. 4 years later, a congressional committee would reveal that AID functioned as a front for the CIA. But why should anyone, let alone the anonymous CIA hierarchy, want Bobby Kennedy dead? What motive could it have had? From his days as Attorney General in the John Kennedy administration, Bobby had pursued policies and targeted opponents which directly threatened the CIA.
Now, Mr. Hoffa,
his self-proclaimed crusade against organized crime had begun to highlight the long-standing links between organized crime bosses and CIA chiefs, a link exemplified by the joint Mafia-CIA assassination attempt on Fidel Castro. After the fiasco of the Bay of Pigs, he and John had publicly sworn to smash the CIA into 1,000 pieces and cast it to the wind. After his brother's assassination, Bobby's support for the student-based anti-Vietnam War movement categorized him in the minds of many Cold Warriors as a threat to national security.
One thing is clear in this year of 1968, and that is that the American people want no more Vietnam.
A lot of the people in the center and to the right in America did not appreciate that because he was raising problems they wanted to ignore.
I think that we have a structure in this country, and I refer to them as a corporate war machine, or you can refer to them as whatever you want. I believe that they did and will do anything that they need to or that they want to preserve their status quo.
That Cold War mentality flourished above all within the CIA and led to seemingly bizarre experimentation. From the end of World War II to the end of the 1960s, the CIA spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on brainwashing and mind control experiments. Their aim was to create a hypnotically programmed robot assassin who would have no memory of his crime. It was spelled out in this 1953 internal report on Project Artichoke.
As a trigger mechanism for a bigger project, it was proposed that an individual be induced under Artichoke to perform an act involuntarily of attempted assassination against a prominent politician or, if necessary, against an American official.
Dr. Herbert Spiegel is one of America's leading experts on hypno-programming. He has studied the CIA's attempts to create a robot assassin.
If we get a highly hypnotizable person who is subject to the proper programming under controlled conditions and is subject to some degree of supervision and exposed to the target within a reasonable range, it is quite possible and even probable that he will comply with the program and end up not being fully aware of what he's doing.
By the mid-1950s, internal reports indicate the CIA had accomplished its self-appointed task. Morse Allen, head of the Behavioral Control Program at Langley, successfully hypno-programmed his secretary to shoot her best friend with an unloaded gun. Afterwards, she remembered nothing. At his trial, psychologists testified that Sirhan Sirhan was in a hypnotic trance throughout the assassination and suffered from a complete memory loss about the shooting.
I said to myself, Sirhan, you're going to die for this crime. God damn it, face up to it, at least admit it, and make it worthwhile to your own self. And I tried and tried and tried, to recollect it, to reenact it, but God damn it, nothing comes up.
Sirhan was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. His sentence was later commuted to life imprisonment. Because the evidence of hypno-programming was not pursued, Sirhan's prison psychologist, Dr. Edward Simpson, described the trial as the psychiatric blunder of the century. He pleaded to be allowed to deprogram Sirhan.
But he told me that he was instructed by the warden that he was not to pursue this and not to examine Sirhan any further. And then he said that he insisted that he had the right to do this because he was the official psychologist for the prison. And shortly thereafter, he was dismissed.
The theory we present here points to these efforts by the CIA to develop robot assassins, which frankly seem the stuff of fiction. But the agency's own documents prove that by the time of Robert Kennedy's murder, the CIA had taken serious steps to create programmed killers.
It in fact has happened, but the people who arranged this don't go around advertising that they do it or how they do it.
But there are always those who need to boast. William Bryan Jr. was for almost a decade retained by the U.S. government as its leading hypno-programmer.
Use in criminal law, yes I am. I sure as hell am. You have to have the person locked up physically to have control over them. You have to use a certain amount of physical torture involved, and there is also the use of long-term hypnotic suggestion, probably drugs, whatever, and so on. Under these situations where you have all this going for you, like the prison camp and so on, yes, you can brainwash a person to do just about anything. What I'm speaking about are the innumerable instances that we ran into when I was running the country's brainwashing and anti-brainwashing programs.
Less than a year before his death in 1987, Bryan allegedly admitted to 2 prostitutes that he had hypno-programmed Sirhan. This crucial clue is hearsay, so it's impossible to prove. But if it's true, it lends great strength to the theory, and it's only a theory, that the CIA had a hand in the murder of Robert Francis Kennedy. It is more than 2 decades since Robert Kennedy was assassinated. There are still many discrepancies in the official version. This murder is still surrounded in mystery. We asked the Los Angeles police to comment on the evidence brought out in this film. This was their response.
After a thorough investigation by the detectives of the LAPD Homicide Division, the evidence was passed on to the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, who reviewed all material thoroughly. After said review, the subsequent court case resulted in Sirhan being found guilty.
The only true resolution of this case is to reopen it entirely.
We want truth. We want them to investigate cases in whatever manner is necessary to ascertain the truth, and they simply have not done so. They've destroyed evidence, they've altered evidence, they've forced witnesses into retracting statement, and then they've done everything they could to keep all of this from coming out to the public.
If Sirhan didn't kill Bobby Kennedy, then who did? Was it the woman in the polka dot dress? Or was it someone who was openly armed? Researchers into the assassination point out that there was another weapon in close proximity to the senator that night. Security guard Thane Caesar, who owned a .22 caliber pistol, was walking immediately behind Kennedy as he stopped in the pantry. Oddly, the police failed to question Caesar after the shooting, and it wasn't until a scholar of the incident interviewed him in 1987 that Caesar took a polygraph test about the event. He passed. The police continue to stand by their story, dismissing other versions as loosely knit conspiracy theories. Despite efforts by citizens to spur new investigations, Los Angeles grand juries have found insufficient evidence of a cover-up to reopen the case. I'm Bill Curtis. Join us next week for another edition of Investigative Reports here on A&E.
What I think is quite clear is that we can work together in the last analysis, and that what has been going on within the United States over the period of the last 3 years, the divisions, the violence, the disenchantment with our society, the divisions, whether it's between blacks and whites, between the poor and the more affluent, or between age groups, or in the war in Vietnam, that we can start to work together. We are a great country, and a selfish country, and a compassionate country.